Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Welcome back. I'm Renfail here for another Icewind Dale guide. Today we're going to be talking about custom scripts, which are unique ways to tell your characters what to do without you needing to micromanage them. It's not a perfect system, but it is the basic rudimentary scripting system that started with these early CRPGs and then refined in later games like, say, Dragon Age Origins, where the scripting got much more powerful and the AI was much more responsive. Now, the original base game had some base versions of it, but the enhanced edition that Beamdog has put out has taken that up a notch, and so it's a lot more powerful, and there are a lot more options. So we're just going to dive in for a little bit. We're going to talk about the various types of scripting you can choose, what might be good for different classes and group makeups, and some of the things that I prefer to do when I go through one of my playthroughs of Icewind Dale. So without further ado, all you need to do is you pick a character, it doesn't really matter which one, and go over here and click on the character icon or hit R for record, and that'll bring up the character record for any individual character in your party. So in this case, we're going to be looking at Hai Lung, who is my paladin. And down here in the bottom right, you're going to notice this button that says Customize. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And then you're going to see these options here: appearance, sounds, colors, script, and biography. And what we're looking for is the script, which is the AI script that you can customize for the character. When I say customize, you can't really make your own, but you can choose from a variety of options that are available to you. And we can go down through here and go through these and talk about which ones are going to be, in my opinion, the most useful, and some of the other ones that I never use at all. So the Icewind Dale Pregen says the combat AI script is designed to the members assigned to the members of the default party in Icewind Dale E. So this is the characters that they start you with if you choose to use their pre-generated characters. It says the character will defend himself if attacked or if he sees enemies. If they are under the effects of invisibility or sanctuary, or if they are singing a bard song, turning undead, or hiding in shadows, they will not attack enemies. In addition, thieves and monks using this script will search for traps when there are no enemies nearby. Honestly, this is a pretty powerful script in and of itself. And for most people who have never played this game before, if you're coming into the enhanced edition of Icewind Dale, this is going to be the script that you'll want to just use, because it honestly it does all of the things that weren't in some of the original scripts, and it sort of does an altogether combine. Um, but again, it's mostly for people who have never played the game before, but it's a good default setting. In my opinion, it's better than just the basic standard attack setting, which only stipulates that the character will defend himself if attacked or if he sees enemies. That's it. That's a very, 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 very default uh, AI. So is the passive one. The character will not rush into combat. If an enemy attacks, the character will defend himself, preferring ranged weapons over melee. The ranged is one where you'll attack an enemy when you see them with a missile weapon. They will then try to keep distance from enemies, but if you're attacked in melee combat, they'll switch to a melee weapon. That can be good for your archer, but it's also somewhat annoying in the sense that they will run all over the battlefield to try to keep distance between themselves and a target, as opposed to just standing there and firing. So I tend not to use that unless it's a character that's squishy, like, say, a wizard. But there are better options for wizards. Bard controlled allows your bard to sing their bard song whenever they are idle. By default, the bard will only sing when enemies are nearby, and when they are out of his line of sight. Pressing the D key toggles the setting, causes the bard to sing constantly regarding of enemy presence. Note that the bard won't attack opponents and defend himself while singing the bard song. Pressing the V key toggles the setting, causes the bard to stop singing. So there's a lot of manual. That's why it's called bard controlled. And then you can get into cautious, which will make them flee at the first sign of danger. So there's a lot of different options in here, but I'm going to talk about some of the things that I like to use and some of the reasons why I think these are going to be the best options for you. Again, the Icewind Dale pre-gen that comes with the enhanced edition is by far, in my mind, the easiest to use if you don't want to deal with any micromanagement and you just want to have characters that are going to do some pretty decent amount of abilities and defend themselves, look for traps and things of that nature. But we'll get into some other stuff here. Let me get a sip of coffee and we'll continue onwards. So, the first thing I like to do for any of my fighters, any of my melee casters, is I will almost always have them on spellcaster attack. And this is for your fighters, rangers, paladins, so on and so forth. This will have your melee or your ranged characters attempt to slay any mages or clerics that they see in a group of enemies. If possible, they will use ranged weapons first, only using melee if surrounded by enemies. Now, this doesn't really matter so much if your character, like my paladin, doesn't have any sort of missile weapons available. If they don't have any ranged weapons to equip, they will only attack with their weapon. I find this to be one of the best default settings to use for any of your melee characters that you want to be in the midst of the combat, or your ranged characters that you want to focus fire, because as a general rule, mages and clerics are going to be the bane of your existence in any encounter you come up against, because they're going to be the ones that can do things like fireball your group, put everybody to sleep, drop stinking clouds, ice storms, lock you down with a power word. They'll do all sorts of nasty stuff to you. Casters are no joke in this game. And unless you want to be micromanaging every last little aspect of all of your different characters, this is probably the most powerful default attack position for your melee characters. Now, as far as your healers, you can do Cleric Defensive, which means the cleric will cast defensive spells on themselves and then move about the battlefield, healing his companions. If necessary, they will defend themselves, attacking with ranged or melee weapons depending on how close the enemies are to his. That's not a bad one to go for, but I typically tend to prefer the Druid Offensive Defensive, because this doesn't apply just to the Druid. This can also be used for a Cleric. That's what it literally says, Cleric 3. What this will do is it will take the Cleric Defensive option. So they will first cast defensive spells on themselves. They will then attempt to use any offensive spells to damage enemies that they see on the field, and then as needed, they will try to heal any injured party members. Now, the caveat to this is that if you are taking a lot of damage and your druid is off doing a damage spell, they're going to finish that damage spell before they switch over to do the heal spell. So if you're in a scenario where you're getting overwhelmed by monsters and your druid runs off at the first set of danger and attempts to do an AoE or something while your paladin or your fighter or somebody is taking tons of damage, there will be the cast time delay, because they're going to finish whatever they were doing before they switch over to the heals. So I honestly would kind of say this kind of depends on how your party is made up. If you have a druid and a cleric in your party, and you have your cleric set up to be mostly a healer, then I would say then definitely go with the defensive cleric for your cleric, and then put your druid on the offensive defensive, and they'll act mostly as a damage dealer and buffer with some additional backup heals as necessary. It's a pretty fail-safe method if you've got a cleric in your party along with the druid, because those two together will pretty much ensure that no one ever dies in your group without you ever having to do any manual healing whatsoever. It's a very, very, very powerful combo. But what about your wizards? Well, because I'm a big fan of scum saving, so I like to quick save a lot, and I will reload encounters as I see fit. I'll also sleep a lot, so I'm a big fan of just using the wizard aggressive for my wizards, because this just basically means they're going to start casting offensive spells as soon as they see any enemy on the field. And if they don't have an offensive spell memorized, they're just going to stay in place and use any missile weapons. So I typically have them equipped with a sling, and so they'll just sit there and use their sling if they run out of spells. And if you've got magic bullets, that sets them up to be a pretty, they're not going to be a ranger, but they're still going to be able to do some decent damage just pinging away with their sling once they run out of spells. Now, another really interesting one to go for is the disabler, which will disable enemies using hold, confusion, maze spells, and so on and so forth. But this depends on the type of mage that you're running with. Or the type of wizard. I tend to use DPS wizards. I've actually never run through a group where I had like a disabling wizard who was primarily interested on like confusing mobs and so on and so forth. But I know it's powerful because I've seen it in other people's videos. The berserker. Yeah, this one's kind of crazy because that sends them off to use a melee ability. I wouldn't use that at all. Um, the thief adventurer, honestly, these used to be pretty good. If you didn't before the as I remember correctly, these were pretty good before they added the enhanced edition, because this would, like the adventurer, would have them constantly, to the exclusion of all else, search for traps. They would then ignore enemies and continue searching for traps. But then there's defensive. But these were mostly for like if your thief was going to either be always sneaking with the scout version or always looking for traps, and you would have to manually then tell them to attack. But once they added the pre-gen, that changed things for us because now your thief character will uh, um, search for traps when there are no enemies nearby, but then if they are attacked, they will attack back, so on and so forth. So this is a more powerful script for your thief characters and so on and so forth. Beyond that, I mean, the Ranger ranged is pretty good, although it can be slightly annoying because they will constantly try to um, keep distance. So I honestly just prefer to use the Spellcaster attack for my Rangers these days. So that way they're always going after, yeah, the bad guys on the field, which is what you want. Now, obviously, you can look through these at your leisure, and if you want to choose some of these to better define how you want your character to play, that's cool. This is the default, which doesn't really do anything. Then there's none if you don't want them to have any whatsoever. Once you've picked one, let's say the spellcaster attack, you just click done, and then voila, this character now has that script assigned to them. And then we could go down and say, okay, I want my cleric to have the, cleric defensive done. Done. I want my druid to have the, where did it go here? The offensive defensive, like so. And then I want my archer to be on the, which she's already is, the pre-gen. Oops, sorry. Actually, I want my archer to be, go back, spellcaster attack, like so. And then go over here to Tulip, and I want her to be, this is my thief, right? I'll keep her on the pre-gen, like so. And then I have my mage, which we're going to put onto the wizard aggressive, right? Yes. And there you have it. A party that has their entire script set up.
Here.
I'm going to quick save, and we can go forth from here and continue to do lots of damage and kill lots of mobs and hopefully not die because we have everything set up the way we want it to. In the meantime, Kuldahar. God, the music here is so amazing. So from here, we can choose to head out over into the wilds and go adventuring, because that's what you do in Icewind Dale, the Enhanced Edition, is we go out adventuring. This is fairly early on in the gameplay loop. I actually haven't played this in a few weeks because I've been bouncing around doing some other stuff, so I don't really remember where I'm at exactly, but I know we have explored a little bit. And let's just take a look at the map real quick so I can... Oh yeah, we're off in the Vale of Shadows. So, like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update as I continue to play Icewind Dale and other CRPGs like Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. I'm currently doing a Deadfire playthrough as of February 2023, and I'm continuing to do content around the first game as well, plus we're doing some Baldur's Gate 2. And we're waiting for Rogue Trader, and I may be getting into the DLC for Solasta this year at some point. So follow along for all those good things. Support if you can. Memberships here on YouTube are the easiest way, also over at our Patreon page. But you can also do super chats and stickers and premieres and super thanks on uploaded videos. Don't forget the Discord. I'll see everybody in the next video. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks to those of you who are supporting, because it keeps me on the air doing this full time. Till next time, everybody. Happy gaming.